Hello, everybody. Thanks a lot for coming to and joining us in the Learning Lab 17. So I'm going to share my screen, and then we're going to get started. So today, what you're going to be talking about is deep learning using UNet models to perform seismic inversion. We have another guest presenter, Janil, and the session is co-hosted by me, Daniel Tread, and David Emery. So just as a start, you're going to present our guest. Janil, would like to present yourself?
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, basically, my title is over there. I have been working with Dr. Daniel Tread for 4 years, and my interest is in machine learning, physics-guided machine learning in geophysics right now.
Yeah. And nowadays, you are finishing your master's and you are a data analyst at the McDaniel and Associates, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So just to present the hosts of the session, my name is Marcelo Guarido. I'm a data scientist with PhD in geophysics, and actually have a background in physics. I'm a physicist by undergrad with experience in geophysics. And today I'm the head of the Cruise Data Science Initiative. Our co-hosts are going to be Dr. Daniel Tread. Daniel, would you like to present yourself?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. I'm associate professor in the Department of Geoscience, interested in many aspects of computer science, data science, one of them, and enjoying helping Marcelo with his data science initiative.
Thank you. And our second co-host, David Emery, would like to present yourself.
Hello, and welcome all to this presentation. I'm David Emery. I have, for the last 18 months, been volunteering as a subject matter specialist, and in the fall we'll be starting doing a PhD with Daniel Tread, and I have 35 years experience in industry.
And just remember, he was my mentor in Husky Energy, and I still consider he my mentor. So to start the talk today, we're going to talk about the Cruise Data Science Initiative. So Cruise Data Science Initiative, it's a subgroup inside the Cruise, a consortium at the University of Calgary. And we are focused on doing different types of data science projects that are more related to geoscience and engineering and to the energy sector. Our projects are focused to be from the academic and to the industry people. We also provide programming training in R, Python, and MATLAB that can go from basic programming, learning how to do your first in code, as well as to do applications in machine learning and data science and to build apps. We also provide those learning labs. Those are bi-weekly webinars that are open to everybody, and all the material is going to be available after the learning labs. If you want, you can visit us in our website, www.cruise.org. I'm just going to click here. Should open here. So that's our website in Cruise. If you wanted to access all the documentation, you go to the research part and data science. You can select the year that you wanted to see the webinar. As well, you can subscribe to our newsletters and always keep on tune to our new events and some tips that we send by email. And for example, for 2021, we have all the webinars that we gave this year. You have the access to the video that sent to our YouTube channel, and as well as to download all the documentation that uses all the codes and everything. We also suggest for you to follow us on our Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube channel, and our Meetup group. So going back to the presentation, what you're going to be talking today, it's about the seismic inversion, and that was a project that was done during the geophysics in the cloud competition that was provided by the Geophysical Society of Houston. So just explaining what's the goal of the competition and what's the motivation for our today's guest presenter. So the Geophysics in the Cloud was a competition that the competitors had to perform seismic inversion on real data, and they had to perform the P and S impedances and density inversion, and they had to run their codes in the cloud. So it was provided for everybody in the competition seismic volumes, 3 volumes, the near, the mid, and the far offset, as well the p-velocity volume, that it's a peaking velocity or a velocity analysis cube, as well some wells and wireline logs in 6 locations. So for the whole workflow that they had to do in this competition was to get the data, to do some analysis, cross plots, and some cleaning, as well some data imputation to recover missing data and the targets that was presented in the Learning Lab 15 by Lupin. Also some data augmentation, how to create new features or seismic features or seismic attributes from the ones that we already have to help in our modeling. That was done by Kai in the last lab, the lab 16. And today we are going to be talking about the modeling and how to perform the seismic inversion using a deep learning model. And now to our guest presenter, I'm going to present to you Janil. Janil, you can share your screen and start your talk.
Thanks, Manilo. Can you see the here?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to my talk. I will divide this talk into 2 parts. First, I will introduce the theory part, how we select the model and stuff like that. And in the part 2, if time allows, I will show you how to run the code so you can play with it yourself. So here, my topic is deep learning with UNet to perform seismic inversion. Here is the outline of today's talk. First, I will define the problem in a bit of a detail, and then I will introduce how we choose the model. And in the next, I will show you what the input and label look like after we process the data, and provide some details for the training. And also I will show you some results for the validation set and test set. And in the last, I will make a conclusion. So first, as you may have learned from previous learning lab and from Marcelo as well, the goal is to inverse for the P and S impedance and bulk density at 2 target well locations, which is shown as yellow dots in the map view. But we didn't know where the well is. So basically our goal is to be ready to predict everywhere in this map for those well logs. And the direct input the organizer gave us is following. First, we have the well logs. The most important logs are the DTC and DTS and RHOB. DTC and DTS are directly related to the impedances, and the RHOB is the bulk density. And we have the wells at 6 locations shown as blue dots over there. The solid line over there doesn't stand anything, just give you a sense of order of all these 6 wells. And those are our labels. But in order to predict the well log at everywhere in this map view, we also have to we also need some information that is available everywhere. That is 3 seismic cubes. And those are the near and mid far offset stacks in the time domain. And also we have 5 horizon surfaces, although those surfaces are picked based on the seismic above. And also we only have 5 of them. So the horizon is pretty sparse, and it contains a bit of redundant information compared to seismic. And in addition to that, we also have migration velocity, which is the low frequency estimate of the P-wave velocity. And again, this is just the estimate, which makes sense because one of our goals is to invert for the VP velocity. We have also provided some indirect input. Those are the additional well logs, including the depth in well, gamma rays, caliper and resistivity, etc. However, those data are only available at well locations, so we cannot use that for training or something. We can only use that indirectly for data imputation. That's Learning Lab 15. So yeah, in summary, our input will be the data that is available everywhere in this map, which is the 3 seismic cubes, the horizon, and the background velocity. And our labels would be just the VP, VS, and Bach density as 6 known well locations. So the label data is very limited compared to what we have for the input. So here, just give you some idea of what data gonna look like. So the red line over there shows the trajectory of the wells. It is a bit of deviated, and the colored bar over there shows the where the 5 horizon surfaces is. Here we only have 3. Here we only have 4. There's one in the more shallow part, and we have this 3 seismic cube near, mid, and far, and a background velocity like this. And for label, we have DTC and DTS and RHOB. You can notice that the label is not available everywhere along the well. So that's why we need to do data imputation in Learning Lab 15. But after that, we use that for the training. And we also made an assumption. We assume each well is perfectly vertical. You may think that is a very aggressive assumption, but the horizontal axis in each of the wells are kind of exaggerated. So, by assuming they're vertical, we think we can simplify a lot of things and yet still get most part of the prediction correct. So that is the input and output. The most intuitive way of doing machine learning is just throw all your input and output to a model and let a model to learn everything for you. But we realize we can do it a little bit better by reparameterization. So instead of predicting the impedance and Bach density directly, we can predict the VP and VS instead, alongside with the Bach density. Why are we doing this? Because we realized one of our input is background velocity, and that's velocity. So we can some sort of create a highway to pass the information to the output directly. And we can calculate the impedance and Bach density based on our predictions. But however, after some trial and errors, we find that it is pretty hard to predict the Bach density directly. So we decided to train a dedicated model for just predicting the Bach density. So in this way, although the prediction for RHOB is still going to be bad, but at least they won't have many negative effects on the training for Model 1. Although inevitably we have to calculate the impedance using the prediction of RHOB anyway, but this is something that we cannot avoid. So after that, we have decided what input and output to use. The next question is which model should we use? Here I'm referencing a figure from Dan Hepson, which is on a similar problem. Here, he points out that actually a point in a Verilog is related to a few surrounding points in the attributes. This makes sense because usually those attributes are from seismic, and seismic is causal. So we will have wavelet effect in seismic, for example. So each point in the Verilog contains a lot of information from the attributes. Yeah, and also to be processed, this process is actually a deconvolution process. But however, by succession of many convolutional filters, we should be able to mimic this process without any problem. So in summary, we decide to use a convolutional model to tackle this problem. So here, the first model come to our mind is 1D. It's a UNet. UNet was originally designed for brain MRI. That is a segmentation problem, but of course we can adapt it to solve regression as well, because segmentation is just regression for possibilities. And we modified the original UNet to 1D because we're dealing with Verilogs, and that is a 1D problem. So here I will quickly introduce the UNet if you are not familiar with UNet. So what does a UNet does? It has this U-shaped structure. That's why it's called UNet. And here you take the input from here and you fit it into a bunch of filters. Each filters will extract one feature from the input. And after this convolutional block, the output kind of branches out. One branch follows the solid arrow over there, which goes through a downsampling process, and it halves the image space. So if you have a 128 input, for example, after downsampling, you will get 64. And that is fit to another convolutional block, and you will convolve it with even more filters, and you will repeat those processes until you hit the bottom. And here the bottom is called bottom neck. After passing the bottom neck, we will go through the upsampling process, where we kind of restore everything we did in the downsampling, and gradually restore to the original input size in the end. But still, at this convolutional block over there, we will have more channels than our input. That's why we have this purple linear convolutional layers, which kind of stacks all the channels into the number of channels we want. And that is one branch. The other branch is this concatenation branch, where we kind of take the output of convolutional block instead of going a down sample, we pass it to the layer with similar input size. So we concatenate them in the channel dimension and go the subsequence of sampling. So the reason why we're doing this is that the concatenation shortcut over there can pass some information directly from the very original input to the output. That will save us a lot of time, especially when we're trying to pass the information of background velocity to the VP and VS. And also in the other branch, where the bottleneck, each of the point in this bottleneck can see a lot of pixels in the input. That will enable us to capture some higher level features from the input. So that's why we think the UNet best suits our need. So here, just a bit of a review. We have input of the 3 seismic and 1 formation, and also background velocity. In addition to that, we also have the first derivatives and integrals of all these 4 channels. And we also have gradient and intercept. And besides of that, we also have instantaneous phase amplitude and a frequency from Hilbert transform. Those are generated in Learning Lab 16 by Kai. And our output will be train a model to predict VP and VS simultaneously, and another dedicated model for the bulk density itself. So one problem of UNet is that in this case, all the wells are at variable lengths, so we cannot apply UNet directly to it. We have 2 options. The first option is that we can downsample, upsample the entire well to use it for UNet, because UNet only takes fixed input dimensions. The other, we don't want to do that because we don't want to change the time interval, and we think the time interval matters. So what we do is we design a window with fixed window size. So to make it best work with UNet, the window size should be defined as a power of 2, or at least, since we're using a 3-layer UNet, since we're using a 3-layer UNet, and for each of the downsampling process, the dimensions is half by a factor of 2. So at least we want our window size to be a multiple of 8. And the other dimension is that is the channels. Just to clarify, although I draw this as a rectangular rectangle, we're still dealing with a 1D problem. So we can also define a stride and do a lots of experiment on the stride as well. So here is an example of what the input and label is going to look like for one window. Here you can notice from the horizontal axis, we're using a window of 512. This is the biggest window we can achieve because our shortest well is like 600. You can see that the 3 seismic are shown here in the first figure, and we have background velocity and formation, and the bottom figure is just the well log we're trying to predict. You may already notice something, some problem is that the well logs contains a lot more high frequency information compared to the input we have. This is a bit of challenging because in this case, we have to estimate the high frequency component from the low frequency component, which is very hard. And sometimes you just end up with predicting random noise, random high frequency noise. We'll talk about this later with another example. So yeah, we are missing high frequencies over here. So here are some training details. After a few experiments, we find for VP and VS, the best window size is 512, and we have a relatively small stride of 16. And also we have a low number of initial filters, which is 8. Especially consider we have more than 16 channels generated. Those are because most of the channels are interrelated, so we only need probably 6 filters to extract those information. And also, in general, we found out that as long as you use UNet and you don't input crazy numbers for the window size stride and initial filters, you will end up with similar precision and accuracy. So, which may means those 3 numbers are not that important. For the validation, we use 1 entire well for the validation. So it's so we only use 5 wells for the training data set. We don't want to use random split because that will convert our problem into an interpolation problem, and also that is subject to data leakage. But here we're in a situation where our label data is very limited. So probably, although it sounds very risky, maybe to use all the wells for training is a solution. But however, in that case, we can't really evaluate the result because we already know the answer. And for the optimizer, we use Adam, and with a pretty ordinary learning rate of 1 × 10⁻⁴. And for the loss, we use mean square error, although our matrix is an absolute error, but we think the mean square error can provide gradient that scales to the error. So with mean absolute error, you only have a direction. So if you use that as your loss curve, you have lots of oscillations in the loss curve over there. So here I'm showing you some results for the validation well. This is for the VP and VS. The validation well is well 33. This is the shortest well we have, so we decide to use that for validation. And it is also one of the nasty wells in the 6. But here are some results on the left. The true VP and VS are marked with blue and orange. We can see that the UNet and the prediction is green and red. You can see that we have something wrong in the first part below 3100, but we got most things correct, especially after 3200. And on the right is a baseline model. It's a fully connected model trained sample by sample. So this is a case where the model only sees the point, but not the surrounding input. We can see that in this case, the UNet result outperformed this. And also, we have a relatively small R2 in this case. So that is the result for VP and VS. The result for the bulk density are relatively poor. But still, we can see that the UNet outperformed the fully connected model. Here we have R2 close to 0. 0 in R2 means you're predicting the mean. So we did a little bit better than predicting the mean. But the fully connected example is actually worse in predicting the mean. I think this is because firstly, we can't predict the first part below 3050. We cannot predict the giant jump over there. We'll discuss it with another example later. But also, if you look at the point at 3250 over there, although we failed to predict the peak over there, but at least since UNet can see its surrounding input, at least it will follow the trend over there. But for the fully connected example, we're predicting the peak as a trough. That may explain why we have a negative R2 over there. It is definitely worse than predicting the mean. So why we cannot predict the big jump over there? I think the biggest issue is that we lack of the information in the input, or at least the model cannot pick that information. So here on the left is a result. You have seen this before, and on the right is input we feed to the model. You can see that from this figure, you can't really tell where the big jump is. We expect we can tell something from the formation over there, which is a blue line over there, but it tells nothing about the big jump at 3050. And also similar thing happened to the background velocity, the purple line, which is just a general trend. So we can only infer something from the seismic cubes. However, we can't see any huge reflections in the seismic as well. So that's why we cannot predict those big jumps over there. So I think the solution is that we should dig more from the input we have, which is quite hard, but also we should find another source for those information which may contain these big jumps. For example, we can do our interpretation ourselves to provide some information, but that will be too short for, but the time would be too short for that, especially consider our computation is 3 weeks. So here I'm showing you the result for the 2 target wells. We can't really evaluate the precision of the target wells, but at least we can verify the VP prediction follows the background velocity, shown as the green line over there. It looks a bit weird in well 13 because this is a relatively short well. So as the time extend is like 0.2 second. Well, the well 7 is like more than 0.6 second. And another aspect is that we can notice VP generally follows a linear relationship with VS, which means they have a similar shape. That is all we can tell from this target well predictions. So here, that's basically everything for this presentation. Here I conclude. First, we successfully trained the UNet for seismic inversion. So after 3 weeks of dash, we finally made to the goal. And also the UNet can produce better scores compared to the sample by sample fully connected models. This is because the UNet can make use of the surrounding data points in the input. And also velocity predictions are better than the density predictions. This is because there's lack of information for to predict correct density. So that is everything. Thank you. Any questions so far?
Hey, Jan, I have a question for you. So
Yeah.
could you go to the UNet diagram?
Yes.
Here, so this is something that we discussed with you a few weeks ago. I'm just following up on whether you have more ideas. So, you know, your master thesis is about physics-guided machine learning. So I'm sure you try to think of how this is connected to the physics somehow, right? So we have the branch, the first part of the branch is a series of correlations, and the second part is a series of convolutions, essentially, right?
Yes.
And so in a way, I was wondering whether you got any ideas of, I mean, suppose that you were trying to get to that, to this data flow by thinking of the physics, right? Rather than, I mean, typically what happens is we have a bunch of different architectures and we just try one or the other and something that makes sense. But also I was wondering, could you think of physics, a physics guided lead to this network? Like normally we, you know, you're predicting from the seismic, you're predicting the wells. So there will be typically a deconvolution involved.
Yes, yes, we talked about that before.
Yeah. Right, and you know, you can do the convolutions as a series of cross correlations and convolutions. So do you have any ideas on how to match this into your framework of physics-guided machine learning?
Yes, for that I haven't touched that part. For now, the only physics we taught to model is also part of the reason why we choose UNet, is that we want to directly pass the background velocity to the output, because our output is also VP and VS. That is one part we can best use of the physics we have instead of just training arbitrary black box model. And so the physics is actually hidden in the architecture.
But what about the filter coefficients? I mean, your yeah, could you think of what they would represent if you look at the filters that each layer is calculating? Could you?
Yes, yeah, it is actually pointed out by you that this process going from attributes to Verilog is actually a deconvolution process. So it makes more sense if we use a deconvolution model to solve this problem. But here, I think as long as you have enough number of filters, you are able to mimic the way of deconvolution using convolution filters. And also another things we can, although we only use convolution filters here, but another thing we can do is actually there is a transposed convolutional filter, which should be deconvolutional.
Right.
And this is something we can do. Actually, some of the UNet use transposed convolution in the upsampling process.
Right. So well, I was thinking that the right part of your UNet there is actually a series of convolutions, right? It's not the transposed convolution in the blue blocks. When you say conv block, you don't have a transposed convolution there?
No, just use the ordinary.
Okay, but the UNet typically you put transpose on the right, no?
Yes, sometimes you do, but sometimes you won't.
Oh, okay. Okay, so in this
Y-
case,
yeah, still,
you didn't
yeah,
try the.
yeah, I didn't try it because still you have lots of, it still is a black box, right? So you can learn the process because you have lots of trainable parameters.
Mhm.
So it doesn't really matter. I have tried transpose convolution for other problem, but to be honest, I didn't notice any difference. So in this case, for simplicity, I just use count blocks all the time.
Yeah, that's kind of a pity because if you could if you would have if you had found that the transpose convolution was necessary, we could have concluded that physics is explaining this.
Yeah.
But in this way that there are the same kind of blocks, it's harder to find the connection with the physics.
Yes. But maybe just follow your comment over there on the deconvolutional layer, because this one is a deconvolution process. Maybe I'm thinking the next step we can do is to design some sort of, not UNet, but a VGG-like convolutional neural network, but only use transpose count, for example. That would be something interesting to try out.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Any other question?
Were you allowed to include like a low frequency density model to train it? Would that help with your abrupt swing the well log there?
Yes, we could do that, but we can't get the low frequency estimate from for the test wells. So I'm not sure if that is allowed.
The
But
test wells don't have density logs?
No, they don't provide it for the competition. But I know that this region has public data, so you can get it from other sources. But I'm not sure if that is a bit of cheating or something, so we never risk it.
Yeah, for the competition, it was not allowed to use anything that was inside the survey, any other external data sets.
What if
We
you
did
took
have-
like what if you took like the density logs at the 6 known well locations and you just interpolated them over the region?
You could do a 3D interpolation, right? So you're going to have a very smooth density model. That's what you're suggesting?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
for sure.
That would be a nice idea, actually.
Yeah, we can do that, but that requires a lot of work.
Yeah, just apply like a filter on the well logs and then just use like kriging or something over the area.
No, but that's a very nice idea because you can do, and then you can use in the whole
5D.
seismic survey everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, the big one would be is take the density logs, take the velocity field, use a Gardner's, and then do a collocated Coal Creek, and you could then extrapolate a smooth density field,
Mm-hmm.
which would then actually trend by the change in the velocities.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Jan, you mentioned one thing on the UNet that it downsizes on each of the levels.
Yes.
And so, and you were starting at 512?
Yeah,
So
512.
256, and then, so 128 is the bottom level.
Yes.
Because of most of the, in this particular case, it was resampled to 1 millisecond. That means really 120 millisecond window. Did you try using additional steps to get that down to more of a single wavelet height?
No, we haven't done that. I tried UNet with a different number of layers.
Yeah.
but the 3 layers is the best. So
Yeah, from an operational efficiency. So I'm just wondering whether or not there is a wavelet sampling because it's a convolutional operator,
mhm.
and whether or not that should be a consideration on the actual scale.
Yeah, that is, we can also play with the dimensions of filters as well. So here, I think I only use a kernel size of 3, and in each of the convolutional block, we have 2 convolutional layers. So each of the blue blocks over there has a reception field of 7 filters. Yeah, I'm not sure how that would match to a wavelet or something, because we also have this downsampling process.
Mm. Okay. Okay, any other questions? If you don't have any other questions, I'd like to share my screen just to finish today's learning lab.
Do you want to share? Do you want me to introduce how to run the code?
Oh, you want to show the code? Okay. go on.
If time allows, I'll just quickly show how to run it.
Okay, you can do that. Sure.
Okay, so can you see the code right now?
Yes.
Yeah, so here I just show you the training script, and this should do the training. I will give you an example for train VP and VS, but not the row. Here I import all the dependencies over there, but I kind of control all the model parameters with this YAML file. So just to give you some insight, this is how a YAML file looks like. Can you see it? So here we have the image size, which is a window size defined here, and also the initial filters, the dropout as well. And we have the attribute to use. This is a list. And attributes to predict. In this case, we predict for VP and VS. And we have the learning rate over there and the epochs over there. And also we define the stride inside of this data section over there. This may not be the most user-friendly, but I think in this case, everything is well organized, so you don't lose anything. We can do a quick example here. I'll just copy this config file to an empty directory. So, but we can change a few things, like for example, this time we want an image size of 128. Maybe initial filters of 16. Also, you can change the batch size or something. But for now, I will just leave it. And let's say we define the total max number of epochs to be 60 here. And we can train it by calling the train script. And in the next, you just specify a directory. Make sure you have this backslashes or slashes. Depends on your it depends on your operating system. And after that, it will read the YAML file under this test directory over there and start training. it should work. And we should have a progress bar. So here we just started the training. And here I defined the model over there. So you can switch to whatever model you want. There are more models under the network file. We have this exception style UNet from one of the Keras tutorials. But after that, we find the simplest model is the best. So I switched to the 3-layer UNet. You can see that the training process starts. Usually it takes lower time, like 1 second per iteration. Probably this is because I'm screen sharing, so that's why it's slower. And here we defined the data set we use, and that is the result from Learning Lab 16, where we have all these data imputations and additional parameters generated. And here we define the train and validation data set. And by the way, we scale our input using the 5% quantile in both sides to -1, +1. So that will help the training. And here you define the loss functions you have. Make sure you use Keras losses for your losses. But here I think for the matrix, you can use either loss or matrix. The losses will just enable you to calculate the gradient, but it should be the same. And here you can see that I'm loading the learning rate from the YAML file. And here I'm compiling the model to tell it to use Atom as optimizer, MSE as loss, and MAE as the matrix. So, and here I defined a few callbacks. The model checkpoint saves the best model with least validation, mean absolute error on validation set. So, and we only save the best model only. Otherwise, you can tell it to save the model after every epoch. And also we apply this early stopping with a patient of 50. This means if the validation MAE is not improving in 50 iterations, 50 epochs, and it will automatically shut down the training process. So yeah, here is basically the training starts. You tell it the input data is this data set train, and validation to be the data set validation, and you specify the callback you just defined. And the next, after the training is done, you save the history to the same output directory. This will be the test in this case. And also you save a few figures. So here, just to give you some example, this is still running, so there's no CSV generated, but here from this one, we can look at the history over there, both the loss MAE and the loss MAE for validation. And if you're interested, you can plot a graph using this quickly to visualize a few things. Here you can see that it terminates at 132 because of early stopping, but that is our best trained model, and you can also look at the loss curve generated as well. So did this finish? Just give it a few more seconds and I will show you how to do predictions so you can play with it yourself.
You're almost there.
Yeah, and all the code will be available soon.
Yeah.
So
Can I just ask you something?
yeah,
Why did you choose to use a YAML file?
yeah, because if I give you an example, I used to track everything with a folder name, but I will just give you an example of how crazy it could be. So this is just one example. You can see that maybe after 10 experiments, you just lose your track. And also I have all these, and after a few things, after maybe a few days, I don't know which one is the best model. So I have to make a lot of notes, and also some figures got overwritten, so you never get back your best result. So I found this way, by using this YAML, at least you can what your original parameters, because it's written. So you can also see what attributes you have used because you want to do feature engineering.
Okay.
Yeah. This is for the VP and VS. For rho, I think I use a lot more attributes. So yeah, a lot more things
Okay.
from the instantaneous phase and frequency. Not phase, but amplitude and frequency. So yeah, that may break your code if you lose this list. So that's why we use YAML for
Okay.
this one. So this one's finished. We can run a prediction here. So here, the notebook is called predict PS. We have another one for predict rho because the parameters is a little bit of different. It mostly is for plotting. So, but it will be handy to have them separated. Here we can define the output directory to be the one we just generated, which is called test. And we will load everything. It will also load the history, but I didn't plot it. And here we can define the data set for the test well log. That will take some time. Oh, that was fast. Oh, by the way, I kind of forced the notebook to use CPU only for the prediction, because I think that will be enough and it will be overkill to use GPU. And here we can see our result on the test set. To evaluate its precision, we can rerun the validation set. Yeah, and here we can have the mean absolute error and mean absolute percentage error in R2. We can see that this is not a good setup because we have a lower R2 than our best model. And we can look at the figures over here by clicking it. And for the other notebook, predict RHOB, everything is similar. You just give it a directory and run all the cells. That'll be everything for running the model.
Wow, those are very good predictions, actually.
Yes. Yes, it is. Because for VP and VS, it is easy. We have the guidance for coming from the background velocity.
How is the density?
The density is bad.
You don't want to show, right?
I can show it. It is from the one of the test well. I'm not sure if that makes sense. And do I have historical graph over here. Yeah, this is from a previous one. This is our best density model. I'm not sure why that becomes negative. It possibly is because I have retrained it and we have dropout. So
That's
yeah.
okay. Density is hard to predict.
Yeah, especially for this part at the beginning. That is very hard to predict correctly.
Yeah. So does anyone have any question?
Good, I will stop sharing.
Okay, so if you don't have questions, I'm going to start sharing my screen and they're going to end today's session. So I'd like to thank you, Janil, for this amazing presentation. And I'd like to announce that in 2 weeks from now, on June 24th, you're going to have the last session for this competition. Another modeling done using the long short-term memory, or LSTM. And it's going to be presented by Sheng Huang and Paulina. So thank everybody for coming. And don't forget to follow us in the social media. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.